Hello and welcome to my shop. This video is about my shop. In 2020, I was able to add on to my house a 900 square foot hobby woodworking space. My aim with this series is to help someone in the design phases of a similar project by showing all the decisions I've had to make. So stay tuned. My shop's electrical runs off this 100 amp sub panel. A prerequisite for me was to get my house's service upgraded. I think it was an 80 amp sub panel. I was from like the 1960s, and I had it upgraded to 200 amps. So that feeds in from the basement. 100 amps is way overkill for my current needs, but as you can see, I have lots of room for expansion. So I have three 120 volt circuits, one for lighting and two for outlets. And then on two 40 volt circuits, I have four of them. We have HVAC, dust collector, and a 30 amp tool mainly for my table saw, and then a 20 amp circuit basically for my lathe. And I have two 240 volt tool circuits, and actually my table saw and jointer share one. Technically that's over exceeding the circuit's capacity, but I'm a one-man shop, so I'll never be running those two things at the same time. If you're designing your circuitry, you could share 240 all you wish if you're a one-man show. I realize that might be against code, but it doesn't make sense to over-engineer everything for an industrial space when you're just one guy out in his shop. So let's talk about Conduit. I'm going to zoom you up a bit. There we are. So my aim for aim when designing the my aim was to have the electrical be as modifiable as possible. So everything's surface mount conduit, and I had the electricians install a perimeter run of conduit 3/4 inch around the perimeter of the walls up at the ceiling. And then about every 10 feet, I had the guys put in a drop, so to speak. So it's just a 4-inch square box that may or may not have a drop coming from it. My two 120 volt circuits run in parallel. So wherever the outlets come out, I have both circuits available at once. The idea is to provide a little bit of redundancy in case I'm running the drum sander and a long running operation like a 3D printer at the same time. I'm going to talk a bit about outlet placement. So I often see the advice to install as many outlets as you can in your shop, because it makes sense, right? You want to be able to plug things in wherever you go. But I'd encourage you to exercise some moderation with how many outlets you put in right away. Unless you have your space completely mapped out, you really don't know what you want to put against the walls. You don't really know exactly where your outlet should be. So let's take this space as an example. I kind of knew this was going to be my hand tools, workshop-y area. So I wanted to keep the walls free. I wanted to use my old kitchen cabinets for storage. I knew I wanted to have hardware against the wall. So consequently, I had the electricians only put in 1 and 2 outlets in this whole space. So that let me do whatever I felt was best with the walls. Now I have felt a need for an outlet right here, but I guarantee you I wouldn't have had that thing properly placed had I sketched it in right away. And there is a 4 square box up there, so boom, boom, boom. At some point I'll just put in another outlet. My last item about electrical is more of an anecdote. The electrical contractor I worked with was basically a residential guy. He and his crew were used to shooting Romex through studs and putting in flush mount outlets, on top of drywall. And they really pushed back hard against the idea of doing conduit, mostly because their guys aren't good at doing conduit. That's just not what they do. I saw the foreman showing one guy how to bend pipe out on my patio the day of the job. So I received a lot of pushback from that, both from the contractor and from my builder. It really ticked me off, and I'd encourage you, if you find yourself in the same situation, to go with what you know is right and stick to your guns on your decision.